Tourism is usually about visiting new places and having fun, but sometimes trips end in terrible ways. In this video, we'll look at 5 more of the worst deaths in the history of tourism. Real stories of travelers whose vacations turned into deadly disasters. On the afternoon of November 17, 2020, at Pipa Beach in Brazil's Rio Grande do Norte, families and tourists were enjoying a peaceful day by the ocean. Among them was Hugo Mendes Pereira, 32, his partner Stella Silva de Souza, 33, and their 7-month-old son, Saul. Their dog, Brisa, was also with them as they relaxed near the base of a tall cliff, unaware of the danger above. Without warning, a section of the cliff collapsed. Massive rocks and debris came crashing down, leaving the family no time to react. In a desperate attempt to protect her baby, Stella instinctively shielded him with her arms, but the falling rocks buried them all. Witnesses watched in horror as the cliff gave way. Local resident Igor Catano, a tour operator, was one of the first to respond. Along with other bystanders, he rushed to dig through the rubble. Time was critical. Igor later recalled that they dug until they found the father, followed by the mother and child. The boy was still breathing. A doctor who happened to be nearby tried to help, but there was nothing she could do. Despite their efforts, the injuries were too severe. Hugo and Stella were crushed under the weight of the collapse. Baby Saul, though briefly alive after being pulled from the rubble, did not survive. Their dog, Brisa, also perished. Videos taken at the scene show people using their bare hands, wooden planks, and anything they could find to move the rocks, hoping to rescue the family. But it was too late. The beach, once filled with laughter, had turned into a scene of devastation. Hugo and Stella were well known in Pipa, where they had built a life together. Hugo, originally from another part of Brazil, had spent years traveling in a camper van with their dog Brisa before settling down. He worked as the reception manager at Sun Bay Hotel and was well liked for his friendly nature. Stella was known as a loving and devoted mother. Their sudden loss left the community in shock. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers mourned the tragedy, struggling to process how an ordinary day at the beach had ended in disaster. Authorities confirmed that the collapse was caused by natural erosion. Over time, the ocean had worn away the base of the cliff, weakening its structure. The 60-meter-tall formation had been gradually crumbling, making landslides inevitable. Residents were aware of the risks. João Mourinho, a fisherman and Stella's cousin, had often warned tourists not to sit near the cliffs. He explained that he was born and raised there and that he and others had always known such incidents could happen. The sea continued to wear away the rocks, and while they told people to move, not everyone listened. That day, a beach patrol had reportedly warned the family to move away from the base of the cliff. Unfortunately, they remained in the same spot, unaware of how little time they had before disaster struck. Warning signs about falling rocks were washed away by rising tides, making them hard to see. The local government acknowledged that erosion made it difficult to maintain safety measures. Fabio Pinheiro, a municipal spokesperson, explained that the tides weakened the cliffs, increasing the risk of collapses. After the tragedy, officials faced criticism, with questions about the clarity of the warnings and the adequacy of safety measures. Minister of Tourism Marcelo Alvaro Antonio expressed his condolences, deeply regretting the incident at Pipa Beach. He extended his sympathies to the family and friends of the victims. For those who knew Hugo and Stella, their loss was devastating. They were a young couple with dreams of raising their son in a peaceful beach town. Their story was one of adventure, love, and new beginnings, cut short in an unimaginable way. The tragedy also raised difficult questions. If the warning signs had been more visible, would they have moved? If the beach patrol had been more insistent, could they have been saved? The answers may never be clear, but for those left behind, the pain of that day will not be forgotten. It was February 27, 2025. 4 Russian men between the ages of 18 and 57 went on a scuba diving trip near Verde Island in the Philippines. They were joined by a Filipino dive instructor and were excited to see the marine life the area is famous for. The weather and water conditions looked perfect: clear skies, calm seas, and great visibility. But what started as a fun dive quickly became a disaster. At first, everything seemed normal. The group explored the coral reefs and watched the fish around them. But suddenly, strong underwater currents appeared and became much stronger than expected. These currents separated the group. The instructor and 2 of the divers were able to swim back to the boat, but the other 2 men, 29-year-old Ilya Peregodin and 39-year-old Maxim Melikov, were swept away and disappeared underwater. The instructor tried to find them, but they were gone. By 1 p.m., the Philippine Coast Guard was called for help. Search and rescue teams quickly started looking for the missing divers. They knew the strong currents had probably carried Ilya and Maxim far from where they started, which made the search more difficult. After several hours, Ilya was found unconscious in the water and rushed to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead. While the cause was unclear, strong currents likely prevented him from surfacing. Later, rescue teams found Maxim, but a shark was nearby, and he had severe injuries. It took over 30 minutes to recover his body. Authorities couldn't confirm if the shark was involved in his death, and no autopsies were performed. Both bodies were returned to their families. This incident was unlike anything locals had experienced in the area before. Shark-related incidents in the Philippines are very rare, and there had been no reported cases in the region for over a year. This tragedy raised many questions. Were the currents too dangerous that day? Did something attract the sharks closer to shore? And most of all, could this have been prevented? The Philippine Coast Guard launched an investigation and discussed ways to improve diving safety, including stronger warnings about currents and stricter dive briefing rules. Dive shops may also need to update emergency equipment and safety plans. Local divers who were there that day described the water conditions as very difficult. One experienced diver, Diego Reyes, said the surface waves made it hard to stay together. If someone got separated from the group, it became dangerous very quickly. Many people who saw what happened were left shaken but thankful that the rest of the group returned safely. Ilya and Maxim were known for their love of diving and the ocean. Their loss has deeply affected the diving community. While Verde Island is known for its beautiful marine life, the strong currents and active sea life can be dangerous, even for experienced divers. The Verde Island Passage is often called the center of marine biodiversity and attracts thousands of tourists every year. Most people dive there without problems, but this event showed how quickly things can go wrong. The same waters that bring people unforgettable experiences can also be unpredictable and dangerous. After what happened, local dive operators and authorities are now paying closer attention to safety. The investigation may lead to new rules to better protect future divers. In dangerous conditions, better safety measures could save lives. For the families of Ilya and Maxim, the pain of losing their loved ones is something they will carry forever. Many wonder if this tragedy could have been avoided. If the conditions were checked more closely or if help had come faster, would the outcome have been different? The sea is beautiful, but can change without warning. No matter how skilled a diver is, nature cannot always be controlled. It was May 15, 2023, in Puerto Escondido, Mexico, a well-known beach town on the Pacific coast. Victor Masson, a 27-year-old Canadian from Quebec, was on vacation with his girlfriend, Elva Castillo, a native of Mexico. They had been staying with Castillo's family, enjoying their time together. But what was supposed to be a relaxing trip ended in tragedy. Victor was a mortgage advisor at Laurentian Bank and had studied at Bishop's University in Sherbrooke. His life took a sudden and violent turn after spending the day at the beach with Elva. That evening, she went out to dinner with her family, while Victor stayed back at their hotel. At around 1:45 a.m., Victor left the hotel alone. He ended up at a local bar called Michelada El Aldoquin, where he met a man and two women. What started as a casual interaction turned into a dangerous situation. According to investigators, an argument broke out over an unpaid bar tab. When Victor tried to leave, the group wouldn't let him. Feeling uneasy, he sent his girlfriend a message explaining that he had no idea what was happening and asked her to find his location and call the police if he texted her the word danger. Minutes later, he added that he was stuck with them and had tried to leave, but they insisted he stay. He described the situation as weird. These were his last messages before things escalated. The next morning, authorities found Victor's body 2 miles from the bar. His phone and passport were near him, but his wallet was missing, suggesting a possible robbery. Witnesses later helped piece together the events that led to his death. Sergio Ruiz Luengas, a bystander, saw Victor trying to leave in his car when he collided with a motorcycle carrying a woman. The impact triggered a confrontation with the group he had met at the bar. One of them, later identified as Mario Omar Sanguinez Lopez, threw a rock at Victor's car. Moments later, Lopez pulled out a weapon and fired twice. Victor was then pushed into the passenger seat of his car. The group fled the scene, leaving him critically injured. By the time authorities arrived, he was already gone. The case became more complicated when police had no immediate suspects. But a week later, Sergio Ruiz Luengas stepped forward as a key witness. He told police he had seen the entire incident and identified Lopez as the one responsible. However, before he could testify further, Ruiz was found dead under suspicious circumstances. His sudden death raised serious concerns. Authorities did not confirm a direct connection between his killing and Victor's case, but many questioned if it was an attempt to silence him. Meanwhile, Victor's family struggled to get answers. His brothers flew to Mexico to identify his body but faced difficulties communicating with local authorities. Even their lawyer, hired to help them navigate the legal process, withdrew from the case out of fear for their safety. Victor's death happened just days after another tragic attack on a foreign tourist. An Argentine man named Benjamin Gamond was attacked with a machete in another part of Oaxaca, raising concerns about safety in the region. Although Oaxaca is generally known for its lower crime rates, these recent incidents painted a different picture, especially in popular tourist areas like Puerto Escondido. As investigations continued, authorities focused on the bar altercation and eventually charged Mario Omar Sanguinez Lopez with homicide. However, the unresolved death of Sergio Ruiz Luengas left many questions unanswered. Victor's last messages to his girlfriend, the confrontation at the bar, and the events that followed all suggest a terrifying chain of events. But was the argument over the bill really the reason behind it all? Was there more to the story? And why did the only known witness lose his life so soon after speaking out? Victor's family remains in search of justice, but the slow-moving investigation has left them frustrated. His brothers, heartbroken and desperate for answers, have struggled to get any clear information. Many wonder if more could have been done to prevent what happened. Could Victor have been saved? Was there a larger issue at play? And what about the safety of tourists in Puerto Escondido? For now, the mystery remains. Until more answers come to light, Victor's story is one of loss, unanswered questions, and a vacation that ended in tragedy. On February 5, 2025, a tragic incident occurred in Salvador, Brazil, at the historic São Francisco Church and Convent. This centuries-old church, known for its elaborate Baroque interior and golden carvings, had been a major tourist attraction. However, that afternoon, a structural failure led to a devastating collapse, claiming the life of 26-year-old Julia Panchoni Righetto, a food marketing expert from Sao Paulo. Julia had been visiting Salvador with her boyfriend and 3 friends, enjoying the city's rich culture and history. Earlier that day, she had shared photos of her trip, showing her excitement as she explored famous landmarks like the St. Marcelo Sea Fort. Traveling was one of her passions. She had previously visited places like Italy, Spain, and Croatia. That afternoon, the group arrived at São Francisco Church, a site built in the early 1700s. Over the years, the church had undergone restorations, but some parts of the structure had become unstable. The ceiling in particular showed signs of wear. A friar had recently alerted the National Historic and Artistic Heritage Institute, or IFAN, about the issue, but no immediate action was taken. At around afternoon, as Julia and her friends were about to leave, disaster struck. A large section of the ceiling suddenly collapsed, sending wooden beams and heavy plaster crashing down. The impact was powerful, creating a massive cloud of dust and chaos. People screamed and ran for safety as debris rained down. Julia was caught under the rubble. Her boyfriend and friends tried desperately to reach her, but the damage was severe. Rescue workers, including the Civil Defense, Fire Department, and Civil Police, rushed to the scene, working quickly to remove debris and search for survivors. Unfortunately, Julia did not survive. Her body was recovered within 2 hours. The collapse injured several others. One of Julia's friends suffered a head injury and was taken to the hospital. 4 other people, including 2 foreign tourists, were also hurt and received medical attention. The church, once a symbol of Brazil's rich history, was now a site of devastation. The incident shocked locals and visitors alike. São Francisco Church has stood for more than 300 years, representing Brazil's colonial past and architectural heritage. Experts had long warned about its structural weaknesses, but no urgent steps had been taken to reinforce it. After the collapse, officials launched an investigation. Sosthenes Macedo, a civil defense representative, explained that the roof structure likely failed due to the weight of the upper sections. The wooden beams, weakened over time, could no longer support the ceiling, leading to its sudden collapse. The tragedy raised serious concerns about the safety of historical sites in Brazil. The Ministry of Culture and IFAN released a statement expressing their condolences and pledging to work with local authorities to determine what went wrong. They also stressed the need for stronger safety measures at tourist sites to prevent similar incidents in the future. A major question was why the church had remained open despite warnings. A friar had noticed a bulging in the ceiling just days before and reported it to IFAN. However, no immediate action was taken. Officials later stated that if the friar had believed the situation was an emergency, He should have contacted the civil defense or fire department. Unfortunately, no further steps were taken, and the church remained open to visitors. Julia's passing devastated her family, friends, and the travel community. She had been full of life, eager to explore the world and share her experiences. Just hours before the collapse, she had posted pictures of another historical site, enjoying her time in Salvador. No one could have imagined the tragedy that would unfold later that day. As investigations continued, authorities faced difficult questions about responsibility and oversight. The collapse highlighted the risks of neglecting maintenance at historic landmarks, especially those frequented by tourists. Moving forward, officials promised stricter measures to ensure the safety of visitors and prevent such tragedies from happening again. It was February 19, 2025, when 53-year-old Russian tourist Olga Perminova boarded Sri Lanka's famous Poti train. She was traveling with a Russian tour group, eager to experience the scenic railway route known for its breathtaking views of tea plantations, dense forests, and mountains. Olga, a security worker from Saratov, Russia, had always loved exploring new places, but her excitement to capture the perfect photo would soon lead to a fatal mistake. The Poti train runs from Colombo Fort to Badulla, covering nearly 190 miles in about 10 hours. It is one of the most beautiful train rides in the world, with the stretch from Nanwoya to Ella being particularly famous for landmarks like the Nine Arches Bridge. For Olga, this was a dream trip. The open-air train, fresh mountain air, and stunning landscapes made it a perfect opportunity for photography. As the train moved through the countryside, Olga leaned out of an open door to take a selfie. Holding onto the metal rails for support, she aimed her camera to capture the scenery. Reports suggest she may have been trying to photograph the Nine Arches Bridge. However, while positioning herself for the shot, she extended her head too far beyond the train. Tragically, she struck a rock at high speed. The impact was severe, knocking her from the train. She fell to the ground below, suffering critical head injuries. Passengers and train staff rushed to help as the train came to an emergency stop. Emergency responders arrived quickly and transported her to Badulla Teaching Hospital. Despite immediate medical care, her injuries were too severe, and she was later pronounced dead. Doctors did everything they could, but the damage was irreversible. The accident happened between the Badulla and Haliella railway stations, an area with narrow passages and winding tracks. Authorities believe Olga's decision to lean out of the train was a brief moment of misjudgment that cost her life. Her death sent shockwaves through the travel community, especially among tourists visiting Sri Lanka's famous railway. Unfortunately, this was not the first time such an incident had occurred. Across the world, many travelers have lost their lives while attempting selfies in risky locations, near cliffs, waterfalls, and even moving vehicles. Sri Lanka's Poti train is known for its beauty, but it also presents real dangers. The open doors and footboards hanging over the tracks create hazards that are often underestimated. Tourists are often so focused on capturing the perfect image that they overlook the risks involved. Olga was part of a tour group, but it's unclear if others were aware of her actions. Many travelers take photos alone, driven by the appeal of social media. The desire to document experiences can sometimes push people into unsafe situations. After the incident, the Russian government arranged for Olga's body to be sent back home. Her family, who had expected her to return with stories of adventure, was left mourning a devastating loss. The Poti Railway, known for its scenic beauty, became the site of yet another selfie-related tragedy. Just months earlier, similar accidents had occurred around the world. A British tourist in India lost his life after attempting a selfie in a dangerous area. In Bali, a couple fell 80 feet while posing for a photo near a waterfall. These incidents raise concerns about the risks involved in taking selfies in hazardous locations. Researchers have found that such accidents are becoming increasingly common. A 2018 study by the National Library of Medicine reported that between 2011 and 2017, at least 259 people worldwide died in selfie-related incidents. The most common causes were drowning, falls, and transportation accidents. Olga's story leaves many unanswered questions. What if she had stayed inside the train? Could stricter safety measures have prevented this? Should social media platforms do more to warn users about the dangers of taking photos in risky situations? One thing is certain, no photo is worth a life. Olga was a grandmother, a mother, and a traveler who sought adventure. Sadly, a single moment of risk ended her journey far too soon. Her story is one of many. Every year, more travelers lose their lives in the pursuit of the perfect image. As social media continues to grow, these tragedies may continue. It's a reminder that safety should always come before capturing a moment.